Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Tickle Trunk of Horrors. You're here with Timothy, Mark, and Alexandria.
Hello.
And we are also known as World Paranormal Research Society. We have a special guest on the show today. Her name is Loren Molloy. I think that's how you pronounce the last name. She's trying to raise money for a horror film by the name of Yield. But however, this is the Easter show. So we're also going to talk about Easter. You just informed me that this lady is actually a minister.
It says she's an ordained minister at Open Ministry. I don't know what Open Ministry is, but it just says she's an ordained minister.
Okay, and so she's supposed to be giving us a call here in just a few minutes. One of the reasons why there's two reasons why I actually wanted to cover this story. One of them, the guy who was in George Romero's film, one of the zombie films, who played a helicopter zombie, I forget the name of that film, he's actually involved in the project. And Lion Beckwith is actually involved in the project. For those who know me, I've done independent horror films, and actually Lion is a very good guy, very polite guy. He's one of the people that I had casted when I was going to shoot Cannibal Fever. One of the original people I had casted for that film. So I found it interesting that he's going to be in her film. And that's the only name that I really recognize. I can tell you that if you look at the IMDb page for this lady, I did review the film Zombies Incorporated. And I can tell you, it's got some good scenes in it for the fight scenes, but then it sucks in some parts of it. It's definitely an acquired taste, I would say, that film. I think it could have been done better had they had a better director, and I'm hoping she's not the one that directed that. I don't know. But Zombies Incorporated could have been done better had they done the right cuts for the fight scene. However, there was a lot of athleticism in that film. So the lady will be calling here in a minute.
Apparently she's owner and founder at Happy Horrors Production. She's also an ordained minister at Open Ministry and a Reiki practitioner. So quite interesting to be wearing those different hats.
Yeah, we'd probably be more interested in the Reiki stuff, even though we run into quite a few fake Reiki people out there. We'd be more interested in that stuff than some of these. Yield, I have a lot of hopes for that one because, again, like I say, it'd be great to see Beckwith in that film and see what the film's going to actually turn into. And so I'd be more interested in asking her about this Open Ministry thing. If she's ordained, I'm guessing it's probably through the internet. I don't know, but we will find out for you.
You told me.
She actually posted in Tickle Trunk of Horrors, and because of that, I looked at the promo to raise money for the horror film named Yield. So I was very interested in it because the guy who was speaking in it played the helicopter zombie in a George Romero film, one of his zombie films. So that's what sparked my interest. I don't remember his name right now, other than the helicopter zombie.
And Open Ministry, she's an ordained minister from 2016 to present, and she does weddings, blessings, and more. So maybe we can ask her exactly what kind of church. And it says they have a page, something on Facebook, Ordinations from a Trusted Ministry. And I'm not familiar with this particular ministry, and it says Open Ministry is a
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
non-denominational church ministry.
Alright, we got a call. Hold on for 1 second. Hello and welcome to the Tickle Trunk Horror Show. You on with Timothy, Mark, and Alexandria. How you doing?
Molloy, how are you?
We're good. We're just going over some of the stuff. Alexandria was informing me of some of the things that you do that I was unaware of. And
really? Such as?
the fact that you're an ordained minister, and it says that you're a Reiki Master. Is that correct?
Yes, I actually have my Reiki 1, and I'm an ordained minister. I feel like that helps me balance out all the dark, creepy stuff I do.
Okay, great. And it says you're from New York, so you definitely are talking like a New Yorker as far as the level of volume, which is excellent, so we don't have no problem hearing you.
Awesome. Yay for New Yorkers.
Yeah. The thing I'd like to say is, and I was trying to remember his name, I watched the promo video for the movie Yield. The guy who played the helicopter zombie, what's his name again, if you don't mind?
Jim Crut.
Okay, I'm sorry, it slipped my mind there, but what is his involvement with the film?
Actually, he's playing one of the lead hillbillies in the movie. We met at a convention. We wound up doing a horror panel together, and we wound up just kind of talking and, having the energies that were right for, working on something. And he was just kind of perfect. So he's one of the leads now.
Yeah, and also who I noticed when I looked up on the IMDb page, and I don't know if, because I know Lion Beckwith, I actually casted him in one of the films I was going to shoot called Cannibal Fever, and I never did shoot the film, but he was definitely one of the guys that I had casted for that role. Very good actor.
Yeah, he's awesome. When I wrote the script, he was actually already in mind for the part, which is why the part he's playing is Leo, on a kind of play on words with his name Lion, so that's why the character is named Leo. If you can give us a little rundown on what the story's about. I know I read it on the IMDb, but if we could go a little deeper into it. Yeah, sure. You've actually started because I went on vacation to Florida and decided to go hiking. So I looked up on Google nature hiking and trails, and this forest popped up, and it's supposed to have good hiking trails. Well, turns out it wasn't. It was basically private property from what I got told, and it was scary. I literally, got out of there, and people were like, wow, I'm surprised you got out. Once you go in, police aren't allowed in. And then I did a Google search about it, and there are properties all over the United States, places in Florida, in Georgia, several other states that say national park or forest. There are actually privately owned lands where people are living within there. And that thought scared me enough, and I actually saw this sign. It was like a landmark sign, a number sign as you're driving down, and there were these deer hooves hanging over it, dripping down with blood, and I took a picture of it, which is up on the Yield's Facebook page as part of the inspiration. So the combination of, getting out there and thinking it's going to be some beautiful hiking, nature walking kind of nonsense, and discovering that it's not like that in some places, whether it says national or not, and then doing the search and seeing these, privated lands, that was enough to spur a movie for me. So Yield is, a couple goes on vacation, they decide to go hiking, they're going to, have nature and be together and all cutesy. They get in Solaris National Forest, and the tires on the truck blow. When the tires blow, they jump out of the truck and immediately realize this isn't pretty hiking land. This is a scary moment. So it becomes a cat and mouse labyrinth of hillbillies, obstacle courses of death, and seeing if they can get out alive before they get turned into people pizza, because the people who live inside are cannibalistic, brilliant hillbilly folk. They're not mutants, they're not unintelligent, they are brilliant and use the land as part of their kill method. I actually have 2 other Yield movies planned after this one. One is more of a retribution movie, and the other one is more of a time period piece explaining how they got like that and how they got the land in the first place. So the story will keep building and get more complex and messed up as, the numbers go on, but I really have 3 movies in mind. This first one, which we're in pre-production, we're about to start an Indiegogo campaign for Yield, the horror movie. And there's going to be a lot of perks where it's like I've created shirts or items that people are going to be wearing in the movie that people can buy as a perk, so you get an as seen in the movie item, either a shirt or a necklace or whatever it is, plus, you know, all sorts of IMDb film credits depending on how much of a payment of perk they do, all sorts of stuff like that, so that I can make sure I make this movie as epic as possible. Because if you think about the cast that's already joined up, like I said, Jim Crut is in it. He was the helicopter zombie from Dawn of the Dead. We got Jeremy Ambler. He was one of the Walking Dead zombies. Ryan Beckwith. He's going to be in the Wonder Woman 1984 coming out in 2020. And this is just some of the names that have jumped on board already. I want to be able to have the gore aspects, the editing aspects, the soundtrack aspects be epic enough to be honorable for these people who have joined aboard, you know what I mean? So that takes funding, and although there's plenty of things we're able to afford right now, there are tons of things that we want to make sure are so good that you're wondering, is this indie or is this mainstream? You know, that's the goal in mind, is to make it as amazing as possible, because you got amazing people working on it.
Let me ask you this question, because you're from the New York area up there. And I know two different acting coaches. One of them I like, one of them I don't. One of them's name is Ron Milkey. And I can't remember if Lion was associated with Ron or the other guy. But I've been in the industry for 11 years, so yeah, I definitely know. But you're right. Lion's one of them actors I knew would be in an A-list film very, very soon. And the fact that he did get the Wonder Woman. He's done some great roles before as a really good actor, and that's why I wanted to work with him. But,
yeah, it's going to be pretty impressive. Because I also have Rusty Gilligan. He was in Pete's Dragon. He's an amazing artist. He's doing a lot of the production work, artistically speaking. And he's going to be acting in it. And him and Jim Crut actually have been in a film before. I can't remember the title right now. So it would be nice to have them paired up in that again. And, you know, everything takes money. I mean, you know, we have to pay for hotels for all these people. You know, you got to make sure you feed everybody, give them water. You know, you want to make sure that your special effects are good. You want to make sure that you're coloring and all the little details you don't realize until suddenly you're producing and directing it. And you're going, wow, there's a lot. But, it's, you know.
Hey, I wanna say this. I looked at the clip for Zombie Incorporated. That could have been a really great fight scene. But whoever edited that fight scene, I would not use them, and I don't know who it was. I'm saying that because that guy used a. You said who edited it?
I have no idea. All I was on the cover of that and in some background part. Okay. After that, that's the only thing I had a part of.
Yeah, they took a guy with real athletic ability where he was doing flips and stuff. And they made the fight scene suck. I mean, it's like it could have been so much better. And depends on who your editor is, and definitely that editor and your director. And you're the director for this film, so we're assuming this is going to be a great horror film.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been when I first decided to start writing horror novels, I knew in my mind that I was going to write the 3 novels I have, which is The Very Devil Herself, The Storyteller of Pain, and The Bedtime Killer. And I knew after I had published The Bedtime Killer, I was going to start producing movies. So that's why I opened up my film company, Happy Horrors Productions. And I've had this movie Yield in my head for at least 6 years. And I was, you know, disturbing family members, explaining this film to them, you know. And it's gonna be really, really good between the talent I have in the crew. I mean, Sean Anthony is an incredible DP. I have Andy Hansen, who is like the woman of Blood Manor in New York City, and she's also incredible in all the film stuff she does. So I mean, between that and Alyssa Booth acting as well, it's so much talent, so many people that are understanding that I am building what I call the Happy Horrors family and army, where we're all soldiers working towards the same cause, which is an epic horror movie, where everybody is putting their all into it for no other reason than they want an amazing masterpiece that they can accomplish. So when you have that many people working from heart and 100%, it's going to be amazing.
I had a quick question for you. It's Alexandria here, and welcome to the show. Was there something...
Hi, sweetheart. Thank you.
Hi. We're honored to have you. Was there something going... We're going to go backwards into the kind of eons of time. Was there something that inspired you as a child to kind of want to go to the route of horror? Because, you know, we talk to a lot of people and they say, this happened to me, or I had this experience. Because I know you did say that you're a Reiki practitioner, you're a minister, so you are a well-rounded person, which is good, well-balanced. But was there something in younger years that kind of said, you know what, you had that horrific moment in your life where you said, you know what, that's my path, and I'm going to take it?
Yeah, I really did. Okay, it's multifaceted once again, and thank you for the compliment of being well-rounded. I appreciate that. I was about 4, I will say. When it was about 4:30 in the morning, the entire family's sleeping. I go into the living room, turn the old tube TV on to, you know, channel 3, whatever it was, click, click, and it was HBO that was left on.
Right.
The TV turns on, and it was the scene from Beetlejuice where they're ripping their faces off trying to get the people to notice them.
Right.
That moment disturbed me so much, I screamed at the top of my lungs. The entire family showed up, yelled at me for putting the TV on without supervision, and disturbed me for life. After that, I was a bad child again, and I had turned on the TV in my room, and it was like TNT or one of those channels that had Hellraiser on it. And it was the part where all the hooks are into the dude, Frank, and he goes, Jesus wept, and they pull him apart, and he goes, splatter. Once again, I was like, oh! So between those two moments, I also was just kind of naturally drawn to the dark and the macabre, because it was like first grade where we had to do an oral presentation of something we read, and I decided to read out loud The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe.
Right. Wow.
So, I don't know if it was I was born this way, because it never kind of changed. I was a small child hiding in, like, clothing racks, disturbing people while moving just to sleep, so they're, like, freaking out and wondering, is the store haunted, as my mother's going, stop terrorizing people, we're going home now. So I don't know if I was born just slightly disturbed and entertainingly macabre, or if all of the nuances around me also made a big difference, because I was writing little creepy stories in elementary school. But then I would come home, and then the universe, for some reason, would, you know, I'd turn on the TV, and whoever was watching last, it was like, oh my God, that's epic. I mean, Hellraiser changed my life. To think that a wall could open up and creatures could come out, that was amazing. That changed my world. I was like, anything's possible, and I want to be a part of that, you know?
Right. But, you know,
so I think it's kind of cool.
But you know what, let's put it into perspective for our listeners too. I would view it, and I view it as, you were born with a gift and a talent that you're able now, and you know, you're a woman raising hell on her own terms, that you get to be an author, a director, a producer, an actress, and a minister. Like, good God, you're living the, not a rock and roll, but you're living the horror, really rock and roll lifestyle. That's a dream lifestyle, because you get to be you on your own terms.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's funny because it wasn't starting out that way. I have fibromyalgia and some other health stuff that causes me to go up and down with issues back in the day.
Right.
I was, you know, working with autistic kids in special needs schools and things like that, and I thought that was going to be my path. Then I got really, really sick, and I knew that I needed something in my life to be doing if I was going to be bedridden for the rest of my life. And I realized writing creepy stories I can do from my bed. I can, you know, create that book from a laptop if I can't make it to the computer because my legs won't hold me that day, let's say. I've worked on so many different health issues. I don't have those problems anymore like that. Do I have some flare-up days? Yes. But I was able to go, okay, life is falling apart for me, but I got to find a way to keep it together and survive anyway. You got to get back up when you fall down, you know? You got to get back on the horse.
Right.
And the stories really were the kind of way that got me into the whole horror world. And once I did my very first horror convention, I was like, holy, I'm home, man. This is amazing. All of my kind of people, where I'm not freaking them out where they're kind of running or faces, you know. So you're right. I think it's talents that I was born with, but I was able to utilize them in a healthy way.
Right. That's awesome. And I was looking at some of your book covers. We're authors ourselves, but I really like Where Did All the Dragons Go? And I noticed that the covers of your book, and then we go to the very devil herself, and then the bedtime killer, you have really artistic and kind of gut-wrenching, enthralling covers, and to me that means a lot because it sort of gives the reader sort of a tease on what's inside the novels, and I think it's very visually pleasing and erotic in some of the covers, and I really like it. It would enthrall me to want to pick up that book and purchase it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and that was another one of those where it was like I just got to figure out how to do it, you know.
Let me ask you a question on with the books. Where do you recommend people purchase your books from?
You can either purchase them from me at conventions or Amazon.com, because Barnes & Noble has a weird attitude with independent authors, and
yeah, they eat up too much of the profit.
My independent, huh?
What we found out dealing with Barnes & Nobles is they take 90% of the profit.
Yeah, that's exactly why the only reason you can get my books is through their online system for free. Not for free, but you know what I mean. Yeah. But if you go to a Barnes & Noble store, they can order it and have it delivered to their store for you. But Amazon's just easiest, and they're actually, in a way, the best route to go for somebody who's independent author, because you get a larger amount back. But it's sad the amount that these companies take just to allow you to have a book for people to buy.
It's really a ripoff. And I have another question for you, because I find it interesting, because we also have an interest in Aleister Crowley. I have his Thoth Tarot deck. What do you glean from the genius? I mean, I really look at Aleister Crowley as a genius in his own way. What are your thoughts on Aleister Crowley?
It's funny, when I was doing research for the bedtime killer, for the storyteller of pain, I should say, I dug into so much of his stuff because of all the different aspects of demons he talks about and things like that. I find him fascinating, but at the same time, I'm weary because of a lot of the dark connotations that he had, and I was very careful with reading some of it, because there's a lot of stuff where if that gets stuck in your head, that can be manipulated, and I know my weaknesses.
Right.
So, like, sometimes you'll hear certain names that people will use in movies, and I have to literally kind of do some staging and stuff, because otherwise that name will repeat in my head. Right. Then you get problems, because I've had to clear out some stuff before. But he's one of those almost heroic people in a way, because it's such a taboo topic, and he was so...
He was so gay and radical.
Yes, the words escaped me, but you know what I'm saying. He's like a king of what he did, and you gotta respect that by itself, you know.
Well, it's almost like Elvis was the king of rock and roll. He sort of was the king of the occult.
Yes, absolutely, and like I said, I really did. I had to research so much of that. One of the reasons I became a minister was to try to make sure that while I'm doing all this research and all the demons and all the aspects and, all that stuff, that I could still be putting some good out there while I'm still researching all this,
Yeah. Let me ask you to go back to the film Yield, because, again, when you refer to where you're from up there, we know the Union is big in New York. Or is this going to be a SAG film or a non-SAG?
Right now I have a non-SAG film. I don't feel any need for a SAG film yet. I mean, if it's a demand, I'll switch it over. I don't really care. It's not a big deal.
Well, I'm against
it's like
SAG.
One piece of paperwork.
I really don't like SAG, because I'll tell you why I don't like SAG. if you go out and you shoot a film like, say they shot The Evil Dead, it was an independent film, the way they shot it, it could have never been shot as a SAG film because of all their rules. A lot of films go bankrupt because if you get an act of God that allows you not to be able to film, you still have to pay everybody for that whole day of work. A lot of their rules is unreasonable from a producer standpoint.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, for me right now, there's no need. You know, I mean, I feel like here's how I always think of everything. If there becomes an issue, then I'll push through it and accomplish it. If it becomes an issue that needs to be taken care of, it's simply able to be taken care of. But it's like going to Amazon or dealing with Barnes & Noble bullshit. I got Amazon. It's amazing. Everybody can get the book that way. 2-day shipping. Barnes & Noble gives you problems. I would have to switch to another company, deal with their nonsense, just to deal with the Barnes & Noble book in the store. If I need to get to that level one day and do that nonsense, maybe. Right now, no need, you know, no stress in it. That makes sense?
Yeah, you can. Let me tell you how Barnes & Nobles is killing the author as well. For the people listening that don't know, Barnes & Nobles is set up so you can go in there, sit at the coffee shop, and actually read the book. Well, what happens is the books that don't sell, they'll have to go back to the author. You'll have to eat that cost if they don't sell the book. So if somebody sits in that coffee shop and reads your book but don't buy it, that's one of the things I don't like about Barnes & Nobles, and I've been in there since 2008. I hate the way that they take so much money from the author, and then the fact that somebody could read the book in the coffee shop and not purchase it, and then at the end of the day they're either going to clearance it out or you have to pay either cost and they send it back to you.
Right, and the other thing with that is that most people don't realize is depending who you publish through, if you have to have the option saying that you can have the books returned, and a lot of companies don't have that option in the publishing. So Barnes & Noble will not work with any company that doesn't have that little box check saying that if we don't sell these, you'll take them back, which makes you automatically non-gratis, can't do it. They don't tell you that. They just say, sorry, we're not accepting your book at this time. The only reason I found out is I had somebody work at a Barnes & Noble who told me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like you said for the...
You guys switch to another company who will allow it that asks for more money on their side. I mean, one book could be $25 that you have to sell it for, but I'm getting $4 out of it. How is that fair? I did the cover. I did all the editing. I did all the stuff for it. I do all the promotion. And I got that few amount of dollars, and I'm using it as a just general throwing numbers out example.
Yeah, I know. We got a book out there that's at Barnes & Nobles that's for $30, and I think we get $2.95 from Barnes & Nobles after it sells, and that's ridiculous. I'd much rather sell off of Amazon, to be honest with you.
That's the way I do it.
But being that this is going to air on the Paranormal channel on YouTube, we would like to, since we just found out that you're a Reiki Master, could you tell us some stories on your experience in that?
I don't know how to do that without telling other people's stories, and I don't do that. I don't tell other people's stories. I can tell you that I have had some people who were told by doctors that they need surgery, and while I was giving them treatment and they were listening to the affirmation meditation that I make, they certainly had no more ailments. Let's say I know somebody who had severe carpal tunnel, and I was giving them Reiki treatment, and they had no problems with the wrist. When they stopped working on their own inner mind and inner health, the issues come back, because the belief that I have heard that worked from everything I have seen from the treatments I have given is the body gives you pain and illness as warning signs about internal stuff going on. And if you look it up and it's knee pain, and you put spiritual meaning of knee pain, you'll see a message that's talking about something that's going on within your mind. And once you hear and see that, very often people will stop having that pain. Now, this doesn't mean that if you have, I have fibromyalgia. I looked into it. I get what it means, all the issues. It doesn't mean it's suddenly gone. But we have so many different mindsets and beliefs that have been put upon us in a negative fashion that start to echo within us on a constant daily basis. That hurts and wounds the body. The placebo effect is a real thing. If I tell you, here's an aspirin, but it's really a sugar pill coated in some bitter shit, you're going to feel better because you believed it. Part of our problem is we hear things with somebody who's an authoritative figure like a doctor, and they say, you're never going to heal. And they go, okay, I'm never going to heal. Well, that's not true. The human body can heal every single organ and regenerate every cell in your entire body within basically 3 months. Your liver, everything is renewed.
Right.
And how you handle every part of that structure of making that new cell determines whether that spot is healed and healthy or sick. So while I'm giving Reiki treatments, I have this flood of heat where all of a sudden it's like I've been stepping into a sauna and I could be dripping. I'm exhausted. And yes, some people don't get exhausted. I do. Sometimes people see colors and it's like, okay, that color has to do with this. Let's work on those issues. By the end of a few sessions, they're starting to feel better about who they are as a person. When you feel better about who you are as a person, you're not struggling with pain and stress as much. Those issues have subsided, which means your physical ailments start subsiding. And like I said, there are plenty of illnesses out there where I'm not claiming a few Reiki sessions and suddenly, boom, you don't have epilepsy anymore. I'm saying there are a lot of things like knee pain or headaches or hands not moving or, irritations of the skin, and I give them what's basically universal energy that transfers through me. So that wherever it's not working in your body or is unbalanced, gets healed in that spot while I make them listen to my affirmation meditation.
Right.
That by itself, you're taking a small bit of time and focusing only on you, healing you. How often can you say that about your daily life?
That's right.
No?
And that makes
so
total...
by itself, right?
Yeah, I got a question.
For me...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
What?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. For me, I know there's a lot of people that they say it's all nonsense, it doesn't work like that, all those things. I didn't believe any of that stuff either until I almost died at 25. I was on all sorts of medications by doctors. I was bedridden. I was having all sorts of seizures, which wound up being side effects from medicine they gave me. And then I cold turkeyed all of it. Got better in ways that they told me I never would heal.
Right.
And that was during the time that I realized affirmations can fix stuff.
Right.
That taking some time to say, it's really important to heal the body I have to live in. And taking that half an hour, even if it's in the morning or while I'm driving, or there's plenty of ways to do it. And we can all do Reiki healing. It's more about allowing and believing and then changing your habits and beliefs.
Right.
Do all of that, you got a better life for yourself no matter who's helping you.
That's right. Is there a specific location anywhere in the world that you were able to go to that has really inspired you to with your writing or your film work that really, took you to another level?
I don't think so. I mean, in quite truth, I haven't been anywhere out of the United States really yet, so I have a lot of exploring to do as my life goes on. But I think for me, there's enough craziness going on inside my head that nonsense kind of inspires me more than any place I've been. Because one of my favorite locations is Del Mar, San Diego in California.
Right.
But it didn't inspire me in creepy ways. It was just such a beautiful location that inspired me to keep going on with my life.
Right.
And I think that's also necessary.
Have you ever been to New Orleans?
No, actually, I haven't been there yet.
I've been
to Salem.
Oh, really? That's Salem is on my bucket list. I've been to New Orleans. That's a place where I think I could just settle in and just I felt so at home there. And it was just, it had the proper atmosphere. It just seems like everything's 24/7, with the historical aspect and the supernatural. There's just so much going on. You just, you got to even take a breath to take it all in.
Yeah, I have friends that go down there for conventions and just because they love it, and some people that live down there. And it's definitely one of the places I really want to get to. And I've seen pictures. Just the location is beautiful, and all the architecture. And the other thing about it is, you know the culture and the people are accepting. That's one of the rare things you don't have many other places.
Right. And have you found too, and we found this ourselves, that people prejudge you without getting to know you? I mean, right away, we go different places, and I mean, if we have some of our tattoos showing, people make these false assumptions on who you are, and it gets kind of sickening after a while. And do you ever come across that?
Oh, God, yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started, working horror conventions, I had blonde hair.
Right.
When I had blonde hair, men and women were trying to explain my own books to me like I was that much of a moron. When I had my hair brown, everybody wanted to know when the author was going to come to the table. I'm like, I'm the author. They're like, oh, okay, and would walk away. When my hair was red, everyone accepted me as an author and a horror person who wanted to know everything about me. When my hair was purple, people walked around me, picked up their small dogs, and wouldn't look at me in fear.
Oh my!
And I would turn around, and the dog would be trying to get to me to give me hugs and kisses. And I'm going, what the hell is wrong with you people? It's purple hair. Why does that make a difference? So now I'm in the dying process again, and I'm wondering how much I can freak people out. But the amount of judgment I have gotten for being a woman in the horror industry, it's sickening. When I first also became an author, and I had the very devil herself out, I had women who were in their 40s and 50s walking past the table and go, oh, please, I don't want anything that sparkles. I'm like, the very devil herself does not fucking sparkle. I like to be bejeweled, because I have a Monroe piercing that's always sparkling, and I have ears that always have, some kind of gem in them.
Right.
I'm like, but my books do. I'm like, one woman wrote one book where some people sparkle, and I'm being bashed for it. Are you serious?
Oh my God.
So yeah, if I wear a dress, I'm a skank. If I wear all closed up, I'm a prude. If I wear my, a low-cut shirt, I'm a whore. It doesn't matter what it is. Whoever is saying it is judging based on their own issues inside. And
Absolutely.
at some point, it's like, you gotta just laugh at them. Like the people who pick up their small dogs and walk all the way around me as their dog wants to give me kisses. One of you is wrong here. It's not the dog.
Exactly. It's it's really, really sad that happens. And the way I look at it is I'm just glad that I was able to be a part of that person's life, whether it be horrific or not. And there's a lot of jealousy. There's people that don't really have lives, so they just have to kind of insert themselves. And myself being an empath in the work that we do, I mean, I get inundated with energies no matter where I go, and it's just sad that you see people that they could be so much more if they would just unburden themselves on what society tells them they should be. I mean, there should be more people like yourself that break down the barriers and say, you know what, I'm just going to be me, and you don't like it, oh well, deal with it.
It's hard, though. I got to tell you, I'll be quite honest. I cry all the time about the level of hate and judgment I get. I've gotten it since I was a kid.
Right.
I hang out with guys, I must be a whore. I don't talk to people, I must be this. It's ridiculous. And, thank you for the compliment, but it's hard. I mean, I literally, when the people want to walk around me, I literally say hi, make eye contact, and tell them to have a blessed day.
Right.
Because I'm breaking through stereotypes whether they like it or not. I'm going to have them wonder about me for a long time. And at least that's a step in the right direction. I'm also one of those that doesn't believe silence is golden. Obviously, I talk a lot, but we have too many issues that we keep quiet about and don't work on. And one of them is what we wear and what our hair color looks like. And if we have tattoos or piercings, it's supposed to be judgment of who we are inside. It's pathetic and disgusting. It's 2019, people.
Yeah.
It's silly to judge anybody or anything that they look like versus their actions, deeds, and words. That's the big difference.
Yeah, and I know, like, I'm originally from Canada, and then to come to the United States, I still have a hard time because, you know, even though Canada is very close, there are a lot of differences, and I've traveled to Europe, I've been to the UK, I've been to Scotland, and just to see the differences in the three countries, like, Europe is totally out there, and you could walk around with zebra hair, and, you know, in London, and nobody would give you a second glance. You do it in different locations, and it's totally different, and people are forgetting that we're all human beings. And you know, I love horror. I mean, I was the child that at age 10 I had saved my allowance and bought the Egyptian Book of the Dead and read it cover to cover, yet my parents were saying there's something wrong with this demon child here, you know.
That is awesome, though.
But I mean, I was always like, you know, the weird kid or whatever, the one that had, you know, I think I had every color of hair by age 17 at school, and I thought, you know what, I'm just being me. And you know, my dad would already say, you know, so what's going on with this kid, because they were very religious, and I would fight them tooth and nail by trying to just be an individual. And that's how I've even brought up my kids, just be you, and you know, who cares?
Yeah, and that's where it really needs to be, and that's always been kind of the problem is you know, you need to be like me, otherwise there's a problem, you know, and it's all like one of us mentality, and that's too much. It's, you know, we weren't meant to be, you know, clones of each other, acting all the same way. We're not supposed to be cattle walking down the same chute, you know, it you know, and it's the same thing with all, you know, the issues between, you know, all the differences. There's no need for it. Differences are made. Everybody's DNA strand is a different DNA strand. That's why you look like you and I look like me. I might have gotten the crapshoot, but whatever. You know, it's one of those. And to really kind of be judging each other, acting like one is superior to another, shows that you haven't woken up enough to the truth.
That's right.
Let me ask you a question. As a horror director, what was your favorite horror film growing up? Because I know you mentioned Hellraiser and what was the other one? Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
But what was your favorite overall horror film?
Well, I think besides those two, the one that really gets me was the original Haunting. I bring it up all the time. The way they did that movie. Now, there's a scene in that movie. It's a black and white movie, and there's a scene where they think there's somebody creepy or a demon on the other side of the door, and these two girls are terrified and it's cold and they're holding on to each other, and the way the camera angle went around this door frame, no crazy CGI effects and nonsense, it was terrifying. I had to turn the lights on. I was young, and I was sure there was a demon breezing through that door, looking through the crack as just the camera moved. I was hooked. I was like, I need to make movies. Right. I used to have dreams of be standing there with a cup of coffee watching all these people create movies, being like, one day I'm going to be sitting in that director's chair. And that's because of that scene in that movie. The rest of it's epic. I mean, Legend of Hell House is another one. The way they did certain camera angles and slow movements, you felt the entity in the room.
Right.
You know, you can't replicate that any other way. And those kinds of moments is what delighted my brain to be like, I need to make movies. It's magic. Movies are magic, and I need to be part of magic.
Right, and since you're such a successful, well-balanced, well-rounded individual, would you have any advice to give any other women that want to get into the horror film production? Because it kind of seems to be an exclusive boys club at the moment, and I think more women should get into it because they have a lot to offer, such as you. Do you have any advice for somebody wanting to get into that field?
I will say a few things. The first is you're going to have a lot of people tell you, hey, you can't, or if you sleep with this person, you'll make it to the top. You need to ignore all of it. Two, the only way to do anything is just by frickin' doing it. I mean, some of it takes money, some of it takes research, some of it takes reading. But if you can say, I want to do something without having anybody else be the reason, then you go for it. You know that you might falter at times and go, holy crap, I am terrified, which I am at all times. I'm doing something that is me doing it. I don't have somebody else as my co-pilot. But I'm glad about that. I've always done everything myself, and I've always had people who believed in me to help me. So to do something like this, I say, you must do the research. Google every single bit of it, read all of it, and go for it even if you're scared. Because at the end of the day, time will pass no matter what. So shouldn't you be working towards something that will make your heart happy and leave an impact on the planet that you can be proud of?
I want to go on the flip side, what you said too, before we get too far past it, because you said people, as a woman, people will tell you if you sleep with this person, you'll make it, and you said that's not true. But also, one of the things with a lot of male actors coming out now, when they have female producers and directors, we see that it's happening, but it's not getting reported as much. And it does happen to males, believe it or not, although it's never taken seriously when it happens to a male, because they're like, oh, you're a man, so it should be okay. That's not true, and we will do a show on that. But the whole point, there's the actor that was in the movie that I think it was The Next Friday or something. I can't think of his name right now, but after Harvey Weinstein was charged, he came out against female producers and directors, and he said, look, these women come up to me and rub on me and touch me all the time. He's a married man. His name's Terry Crews, actually, and he said he doesn't like it, but every time he tries to say something about it, it's taken as a joke. I got two women here, and both of y'all are silent right now.
I think the thing.
Because I'm trying to figure out, there wasn't a question there. I'm waiting for you to say, like, you know, I'm waiting for you to say, because it wasn't really like leading off with a question. That's why I was kind of waiting for you to.
No, I'm just saying that it's got to be a knowledge that it happens to males just as probably not just as much as women, but it does happen to males, and it's true. And there's some A-list male actors that have come forward, and they're not getting the coverage that the female gets. And granted, that's not a question, but again, women don't take it seriously. But anyway, back to the movie.
Women don't take it seriously. That's a whole generalization. I would say that we feel badly that it happened, and there's not much we can do about it except say, yes, that's not okay.
Do you know the actor I'm talking about, Terry Crews?
Be at the same level as Harvey Weinstein, and but can we please remember that the Harvey Weinstein thing has hardly been discussed? It's almost forgotten about again. Not much has changed, so it's not like saying one has been brought to justice fully. None of the issue has even really been brought to justice much. It's like, okay, now both sides are saying, yes, this happened, and the whole point has to do with consent. We have forgotten the word consent in our country. So it's not this man is saying this or this woman is saying that. It has to do with the fact that as a country as a whole, we seem to have forgotten that consent is the largest, most important part of either person's discussion. One is not more important than another.
Right. It
has to do with the fact that nobody has remembered that consent is the essential part here. And has always been lacking.
And just to touch on that one more before we move past it, I have a friend who's an IFB or was an IFBB bodybuilder by the name of Lee Priest, and he, after the Harvey Weinstein thing come out, he also came forward and said, look, all these women come up to me, they're rubbing me and touching me, and again, it was laughed off, and so I felt like, wow, man, like it's just a double standard. But anyway, so we'll move forward and we'll go to the back to the movie Yield. I noticed that you have some artwork that you're selling to help raise money. I think it's artwork. It looks like artwork to me, to raise money. I don't know if these are... could you explain a little bit about what it is that you're selling and where people can buy it?
Oh, yes. With Yield, we have the Indiegogo campaign coming up, which if people sign up now, there is a pre-launch page on Indiegogo for Yield. It's bit.ly link, so bit.ly/early birds win with Yield, all one word. If you go there, you can sign up, and early birds who sign up ahead before the campaign goes live will save 50% off certain perks, as well as getting certain little extra stuff, and as well as getting alerted to new stuff before others do. So that's a big deal. Some of the things we're going to have, Rusty Gilligan have some of his Walking Dead art up that people can buy. Each one will be done by Rusty Gilligan, so that's exciting. We have perks we're going to have with Yield is going to be Walking Dead artwork by Rusty Gilligan, which is fantastic because it's one of those things you don't normally have a chance to be able to get, especially since one of the cast members, Jeremy Ambler, is from Walking Dead. So that's a really cool little perk you'll be able to get with the Indiegogo campaign. If people sign up with the Indiegogo campaign early, they'll be able to get discounts on a lot of the perks. We'll have the Solaris National Forest t-shirt that one of the leads of the film will be wearing in the movie. So you'll have a replica of that you can get. There's IMDb credits that you can get, a thank you credit, a assistant producer credit, as well as a producer credit. There's a doll necklace, literally a head and limbs doll necklace, about 20 inches long, that you can get, which is a replica from what one of the characters in the movie will be wearing. And there's also a Got Pizza t-shirt that another character in the movie will be wearing that you could also get. So there's a bunch of stuff like that. The Jim Clark picture from when he was the helicopter zombie is also available as one of the perks. And one of the Happy Horrors Army t-shirts, so you can join the Army. And you'll even get a Happy Horrors enrollment certificate from our Happy Horrors Army. So there's a bunch of fun stuff in the perks going on. And all of it will help, pay for the hotels and the food and the water and the special effects and the transportation and the filming and the distribution. People have no idea how much it costs to start, getting it onto DVD and out to places so you can see it. And all of that needs to be thought about and, helped out with too. So, all the perks help go to every bit of the movie, and that's, something kind of awesome. Plus, you get to say you helped make a movie. How cool is that?
Exactly. And another question, too. I think you like candles. Who doesn't like candles? Am I right or wrong?
Oh, I love candles.
I had a question for you about candles and the Storyteller of Pain. What kind of inspired you? Because I know you did a sort of a coffee mug with the Storyteller of Pain logo, and then you had a candle. What made you kind of go above and beyond just having a coffee cup? And then I'll ask you after what your favorite coffee is, because I think you like coffee. What inspired you to kind of kick it up a notch and put a candle in it?
Actually, there was a woman that had a candle company with coffee cups as well at some point, and she was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And at the time, she had been making my coffee cup candles. I honestly don't remember her name anymore because we lost touch, and I had to start doing it myself. But one of the reasons I liked it was, one, you get the coffee cup afterwards, so you still get to drink the coffee. Plus, you get this amazing scented candle inside. And I try to bless them as well so that you get a little extra oomph from it.
Right. I just think it's an awesome idea. And what's your favorite coffee?
Oh, God. I honestly like all coffee as long as it's light and sweet. I am more of a... I need a lot of caffeine, but a lot of sugar.
Right.
I'm ADHD, so it helps keep me calm the more coffee I drink. But I actually, funny enough, one of the coffees that whenever I'm out on the road, you can't really, make your own coffee, So
right.
You got two choices for the most part, Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. And a few years ago, I started ordering coffee with different shots of flavor.
Right.
And it wound up making a Girl Scout Samoya cookie taste, and that's my favorite. So it's toasted almond, coconut, caramel, and mocha. It's 4 different flavor shots, but when it's done, it tastes like the Girl Scout Samoya cookie.
Oh.
And that's kind of become my favorite.
Wow.
That way I feel like I'm having cookies, but hopefully keeping my pants line in check.
And I could really see you in the future coming out with your own horror kind of label coffee and making it big with that. I really could, because I think you'd
Oh, I would love that. That's a good idea. I want to come out with my own kind of whiskey company too, and maybe a wine company, because I do like to drink. So.
I think you would be awesome and go to all the horror conventions with your own a horror coffee and make your own kind of labels. I think it would rock it.
I want to send that, since you talked about wine, I want to send that shout out to Camp Crystal Lake Winery. Adrienne King, she has a winery company that does the Friday the 13th themed wine. So let's keep them in mind also. I have a question for you, a little bit off the horror topic.
Sure, and I'm going to have to look into that wine company because that's epic. Yeah. I may have to use that in the movie.
Yeah, you should, because she's a really great lady. Every year she was sending me Halloween candy, and then all of a sudden it stopped. But she's a really great. She would send me Tupperware bowls full of it. But and then she started the winery, so that's good. But the question I have, since this is the Easter show, is what is your take on Easter, and how, as a minister, if at all, do you celebrate it?
I think all of our holidays should be kind of tweaked to have new kind of meetings. So Easter is more a day of celebrating spring for me. I am what I call New Age eclectic. So I'm more of a me philosophy. I take in a little bit of all the different cultures and stuff. So I do celebrate Easter pretty traditional, my mother and my family, because they, that's how they celebrate, and I do it in, happiness and respect for being with them and stuff. But I don't have the same feelings about it as some people do. Everyone says, you can't talk about having chocolate eggs and Easter bunnies and then tell me that it's a very religious day. So it is, but it's more for me about spring coming about, the new beginnings of all of it, and then having Easter egg fights and having an excuse to have a mimosa in the morning. I like mimosas; they're good.
So yeah, that's and you brought up a great point that I've been preaching about as a Judeo-Christian preacher. I've been preaching that this misleading to bring about an Easter bunny with eggs and not talk about Christ during the Easter holiday. But what I will say is, you were labeled the youngest poet. I believe you got an award for being one of the youngest poets.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true anymore, but I won an award for a poem I wrote, and then I actually turned it into my Black Dreams and Shattered Illusions poetry book. The poem was Dread, and somebody had asked me to write a poem about something that they had described that they were feeling about, and I'm like, okay, Knives of Dread. And I think it was Poetry.com awarded me it. It was so long ago. I think it was like 2005. That's a long time for this memory bank. But yeah, and it was amazing, because it was one of those moments where you don't feel like you're actually doing enough or you're doing a good job, and then something like that comes in the mail, and you're like, the universe is letting you know, here's a bit of a pat on the back, keep freaking going,
Yeah, that's awesome. I did a poetry book as well called Love and Horror, and that's one of the few times that Barnes & Nobles actually did me right, where I made $7,000. One night I had a $7,000 deposit, and it was from a purchase order that they had did, which was awesome. But
cool.
Let's see here, so we can figure out. We're going to wrap this up. Do you have any last words to say to the people listening? Anything you want to throw out there?
I will say Happy Easter to all who celebrate, and no matter how you celebrate, it's your way, it's your day. Celebrate it the way you may. See, that rhymes.
It does.
And I would say thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you guys, for having me on. This has been a lot of fun, and I would ask everyone to go to the Yield Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Yield the Horror Movie, and check out the Yield Indiegogo campaign, because every dollar helps every single person make this movie happen, so you guys can see all the crazy, creepy, gory epicness I have in my mind for this movie, which is bit.ly/early birds win with Yield, all one word. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Loren Molloy. You can find my books on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. And if you want to see me at a convention and meet me, talk to me, have a drink at the VIP party, let the convention know to hire me as a guest, because that's how I go to conventions. I get hired, and then I get to party with everybody and talk freakiness and have a drink. So thank you so much, and happy horrors, everyone.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, we another question I want to ask you. I just thought about: are you going to keep the cover the same that you have for the film, because it's a nice cover with the sign there?
Actually, we have Rusty Gilligan is actually working on a DVD cover for us as well at the moment. Once we get all the artwork together, we'll see which one really, kicks the public fast enough. I have no doubt in Rusty's work. I love the one I have right now, but the stuff he's working on, I can't wait for the world to see, because he is so incredibly talented.
And I want to kind of jump in, and I want to really thank you for inspiring so many women out there to take charge of their life and do something kick-ass like you're doing, set the horror world on fire, and be able to tell their stories and to inspire everybody else, and to really show that, horror is a class act. And I thank you for kind of showing it to the world in that fashion. Much luck on the film, and keep us in the loop with the film. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for those wonderfully kind words. I appreciate it, and I absolutely will. Feel free to ask me on any time. This was a delight.
Yeah, this was great. And when she's talking about the women thing, when it comes to my mind for a female director is Jodie Foster. I can't really think of anybody other than her that's a female director.
Well, the other one would be Drew Barrymore, and another would be Lindsay Serrano. She has mass grave pictures with her husband Manny. She's doing some incredible stuff. You got to check out Lindsay. She has a movie Beneath and some other ones that come out, and she actually inspired me. So Lindsay Serrano of Mass Grave Pictures inspired me to say I can do it, and it's because she was such an incredible person to me about all of it that I felt I could. So I got to give her a shout out where shout outs are due,
And if you talk to Lion Beckwith anymore, let him know that Timothy Mark, he knows me as Timothy Mark. Let him know that I'm not dead. I'm actually still alive, and I wish we could have made that film.
You know what? Maybe we can get a few of us from the movie all on your show one day, and we'll have Lion and me and maybe somebody else if we can plan it right.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be epic. I think that would be really great. And like I said, it's been a complete breath of horror air to have you on the show. And like I said, we really appreciate it. And like I said, you're going to continue to rock it. Just do what you're doing, be you, and just set the horror world on fire.
Oh, thank you so much, darling. Truly.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to give you guys a shout out, too. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye.
So yeah, that was Loren Molloy.
It's spelled Loren, very unusual way. Last name is Molloy. What a epic person. Nice to have her on the show, to have a female director in horror. We look forward to having her and maybe other people associated with the film joining us at a later date. But actress, director, writer, poet, minister, Reiki practitioner, and so much more, folks.
Now what we want to do is go ahead and send you to the Easter part of the show. For those of you that want to stick around and listen to the second half, here is the Easter part of the show. Take a listen. Okay, folks, this is the second half of the show, our Easter show. I hope you liked the first half. So we're going to get more into just what Easter is and what Easter means. And so Easter is also known as Resurrection Sunday. So Easter specifically means and stands for and celebrates and recognizes the resurrection of Christ. That's it. Period. Zip. Zips. That's it. No Easter bunny, no rabbit, no damn eggs, although you can have those things if you want. But people are giving their kids Easter baskets, but they are not teaching them about the resurrection of Christ. And so we're going to look into the pagan views as that as well. If you can give a little brief summary.
I'll give a brief summary. Resurrection, again, is seen as a symbol of rebirth, renewal, and really retells the cycle of the seasons, the death and the return of the sun. And it really comes that a lot of people are on the train of thought, or if you have the pagan origins of Easter, is that it comes from the Sumerian legend of Tamazu. And Tamazu and his wife Ishtar is an epic myth called the Descent of Anana, found inscribed on cuneiform clay tablets that date back to 2100 BC. So that is the story, and I'll touch on it ever so briefly. When Tamazu dies, Ishtar is grief-stricken and follows him to the underworld. And in the underworld, she enters through 7 gates, and her worldly attire is removed. Naked and bowed low, she is judged, killed, and hung on display. In her absence, the earth loses its fertility, crops cease to grow, and animals stop reproducing. Unless something is done, all life on earth will end. And after Anana has been missing for 3 days, her assistants go to the other gods for help. Finally, one of them, Enki, creates 2 creatures who carry the plant of life and water down to the underworld, sprinkling them all over Anya and Tamazu, resurrecting them. So again, we have resurrecting them and giving them the power to return to the earth as the light of the sun for 6 months. And after the 6 months are up, Tamazu returns to the underworld of the dead, remaining there for another 6 months, and Ishtar pursues him, prompting the water god to rescue them both. Thus were the cycles of winter, death, and spring life. So when Timothy spoke of resurrection, renewal, this is the Sumerian legend that touches on resurrection, the cycle of the seasons, the cycles of winter, death.
But what we're talking about specifically in that, what we're talking about specifically is the holiday known as Easter. The holiday known as Easter was created to recognize the resurrection of Christ. That Alexander just gave you one pagan point of view, because all the pagans out there like to say, well, what about this? These eggs are pagan related. They have origins of paganism. And so what about the rabbit? Is origins of paganism? And you know, I can agree that, yeah, that confuses kids on the story of the resurrection of Christ. Now, these other pagan stories that want to deal with resurrection has not a damn thing to do with the celebration of the resurrection of Christ. Okay? Easter is specifically to recognize the resurrection of Christ. Now, I have as a Judeo-Christian preacher, I have a few problems with the New Testament story. One, Judas was viewed as a bad guy. Okay, and so that's the perception of many people that read that story. They see Judas as a bad guy. Well, actually, Christ was already known that he was going to die and suffer for the sins of the world. And that was his choice. That's what he wanted to do. And that was his purpose, was to come to save the world from their sins, the people from their sins. And if you look at what Judas did, Judas helped in that process. Actually, on Good Friday, at the Last Supper, what happened? At the Last Supper, this happened. Christ said, one of you will betray me. So it was already known. So why was Jesus shocked? Oh, it was betrayed with a kiss. And so why did he was so shocked that Judas brought the people there if he knew exactly what was going to happen? There's a lot of contradictions in the Bible if you read the New Testament today, the way that it has been translated today. But if you go back and read the earlier versions, and I always preach to read 1600s downwards, backwards, and not anything newer than the 1600s version of the Bible, because you lose a lot in translation. You have to recognize, and all the pagans are going to come out there to the Christians and say, well, this is what Easter means, because they're using the eggs and they're using a rabbit and whatever. But no, Easter, it was a holiday created to recognize the resurrection of Christ. Okay, that is why Easter was created. Passover has nothing to do with this. Not one thing does it have to do with the resurrection of Christ. That's something that's an Old Testament holiday. It's something that they're saying that Jesus was celebrating prior to his death, and I'm sure he celebrated many, many times throughout his life. It is definitely a ordained by God holiday that God commanded that we always remember, and we had certain ways that we were to celebrate the Passover. But I think we get confused when we start talking about Passover and then we start talking about the resurrection of Christ. And we need to recognize that Easter is about Christ rising from the dead. And so, also in the New Testament story, yeah, Christ had a change of heart, was having a change of heart, getting cold feet about it. When you read the story in the Bible, in the New Testament, you see that he was getting cold feet about it and was asking, could his Father, God, take away the bitter cup? And so, but that didn't happen, because right after that he was betrayed, so to speak, although I just looked at it as Judas was fulfilling what was supposed to happen. So how else was Christ to get to the cross unless he was going to be betrayed? And also, if Christ was so eager to die for the world and the sins of the people, why would the soldiers have to come hunt him? You know, so anyway, that story. And then, okay, so we know that the disciples had liars in it. We know that Simon was a liar. We know that he was to lie about knowing Jesus. And so also on the cross, when Christ was on the cross, why did he ask his dad? Because this is the rumor. We can only go with the rumor. There was no microphone there. Well, the rumor is Christ looked up and he asked his dad, why have you forsaken me? So why would Christ say that? It just doesn't make sense to me. Because he knew what his purpose was, and he knew that he was going to be risen from the dead. That's a whole nother thing, is when John the Baptist was beheaded, why was Jesus so upset about it? I don't understand that, because if you know what heaven is like, and you know that's where John is going, to heaven, and heaven is this wonderful place, why are you so upset when John's purpose in life to prepare the path for you, Christ, has been fulfilled? Why would you be upset that he was beheaded? It differs from the other Gospels in minor details that make major differences. And so if you have 3 other Gospels that's saying one thing, and then you have this one Gospel that's saying something else, and everybody wants to follow on what the one Gospel is saying, and not acknowledging what the other 3 are saying, I just have problems with the Gospel of John. Maybe it was not translated properly either. So, yeah.
So if we go back to the pagan origins of Easter, there's actually many accounts of dying and rising gods that represent the cycle of the seasons and the stars. For example, the resurrection of the Egyptian Horus, the story of Mithras, who was worshipped at springtime, and the tale of Dionysus resurrected by his grandmother. Among these stories are the prevailing themes of fertility, conception, renewal, descent into darkness, and the triumph of light over darkness, or really plainly put, good over evil. So to put that into perspective, being a representative of the story of Ishtar, Easter was originally a celebration of Ostri, goddess of spring, otherwise known as Ostara or Easter. One of the most reverent aspects of Ostara for both ancient and modern observers is the spirit of renewal, folks. So there you go.
So Alexandria asked me a while ago why Passover is so connected with Easter. And again, they're saying that Jesus celebrated right prior to his death, that he was celebrating Passover. Well, here's the thing. That was when people said, hey, we're going to recognize the resurrection of Christ and we're just going to put it here on the calendar. They put it so close to the celebration of Passover that, you know, because they're saying that that's what Jesus was celebrating. However, Passover is a different holiday than Easter. Easter is the resurrection of Christ. Passover is when the angels came down to take the firstborn in the story of Exodus, to kill all the firstborn in the story of Exodus, and the lamb's blood was on the doorway. That is Passover. That's back to the story of Exodus. Guess what? Jesus ain't born to the book of Matthew. And so where does the story of Exodus fit in? It's the second book of the Bible. So yeah.
Well, what is your take on this? I'm going to tell you this. In 325 AD, the Emperor Constantine, when he was at his meeting at the Council of Nicaea, actually they said that since the church believed that the resurrection took place on a Sunday, the Council of Nicaea determined that Easter should always fall on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the vernal equinox. And Easter has since remained without a fixed date, but approximate to the full moon, which coincide with the start of Passover. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, Constantine did a lot of things. I mean, he built a temple on the spot where Jesus was supposed to have died, and they come to find out it was a pagan area that Constantine said, hey, this is where Christ was crucified. Nobody knew during the time of Constantine exactly where Christ was crucified. It was speculated, it was guessed, nobody knew it. And that's what I think, that's why I think a lot of people have a problem sticking with Christianity. As a Judeo-Christian preacher, I see a lot of people have problems. They recognize that a lot of the stories do not make sense. A lot of the timelines, a lot of the stuff does not make sense as far as the New Testament goes. And so you got to realize, when was the New Testament written? It was written almost 100 years after Christ died. And so, and the reason why it was written 100 years after Christ died, or put together 100 years after Christ died, was because of this. They thought after Christ died that he was immediately coming back for the people. Well, when he didn't come back year after year, these people started telling themselves, well, good God, we gotta write something down here because he ain't returning. And so the story is he's still coming back, and he's still coming back, and I believe he's still coming back. But yeah, the fact that they want to alter, there's no fixed date. Jesus died on a fixed date, and nobody knows what the fixed date is, and that's why there is no fixed date to celebrate Easter. They're trying to link it in with Passover, which is wrong.
Well, let's tie this up, or wrap this up with the Easter bunny.
Now, they do say that the Last Supper was a celebration of Passover, but there you go.
Let's wrap this up with the sort of commercialized symbol of the Easter bunny and where that comes from. And the rabbit was a symbol associated with Austria, representing the beginning of springtime. And likewise, eggs have become to represent spring, fertility, and renewal. And in Germanic mythology, it is said that Austria healed a wounded bird she found in the woods by changing it into a hare. Still partially a bird, the hare showed its gratitude to the goddess by laying eggs as gifts. And really, the egg as a symbol of fertility and of renewal of life goes back to ancient Egyptians and Persians, who had also the custom of coloring and eating eggs during spring festival. In ancient Egypt, an egg symbolized the sun, while for Babylonians, the eggs represent the hatching of the Venus Ishtar, who fell from heaven to the Euphrates. So another take on eggs and rabbits from different religions, different faiths. And so where did the tradition of egg-toting Easter bunny come from? The first Reference can be found in a German text dating to 1572 AD. Quotations, "Do not worry if the Easter bunny escapes you. Should we miss his eggs, we will cook the nest." And then the text, that's what the text reads. But it wasn't until the tradition made its way to the United States via their arrival of German immigrants that the custom took its current form of today, folks.
Well, there you go. Golly. Well, there you go. So again, let's recap a little bit. A lot of the pagans out there are so hard trying to disprove Christianity that they will take the Christian holidays and try to attach themselves to it. And rightfully so in some cases, because as you can see, there's a lot of elements of Easter that has pagan origins. It really does. And so, you know, that's not just with that, but also other Christian holidays such as Christmas also has pagan origins. But here's a shocker for you people. Are you ready for this one? At the time of Christ, right before the Christianity, right before the crucifixion, right before Christ crucified on the cross, guess what? They were called pagans. Jesus Christ himself was referred to as a pagan. Jesus Christ's disciples were pagans. Their Christianity, when it was first formed, was considered a pagan religion. And so now it's not considered a pagan religion. Now it's considered a mainstream religion. I am a Judeo-Christian preacher. I am Christian. And I do recognize Easter as being the celebration of the resurrection of Christ, which I believe did 100% happen. And I wish that they would celebrate Passover separately from incorporating it into the death of Christ. And so, and into the resurrection of Christ. So it confuses a lot of people. And it was Christianity's way of trying to link Christ to the Old Testament, I believe, by confusion, mass confusion. If people recognize Passover is created in the second book of the Bible, in the Old Testament, and then here comes Christ in the book of Matthew, the first book of the New Testament, they could try to link Christ back by confusing people on what the holidays were. Passover, when you celebrate it, make sure you celebrate it for the right reasons. Okay? It's to recognize the Passover during the time of the Exodus, where their firstborn were killed and the blood was on the doors, and the lamb's blood was on the doors and the window sills. And so that has nothing to do with the resurrection of Christ. Again, that is what Easter is about. So there you go. Well, I'm not against Easter bunnies or hiding eggs or chocolate. I'm not a prude, so you can get out there and have fun and celebrate. Just recognize what you're celebrating.
Happy Easter either way, and enjoy the time with your family.
Yep.